No matter what level of FPS fan you are, everyone can appreciate the beauty of a nice shot. An insane, wrist-breaking flick that defies all human logic, or a methodical shot that was made to look like even your grandma could have hit it. Both are amazing displays of aim that have been polished for hundreds, if not thousands of hours. Many look at aim as the most important skill needed to improve, which is true to an extent, but aim is mostly just an avenue to punish the opponent's mistakes when you capitalize on them with other aspects of your gameplay, such as game sense, positioning, etc. As long as your aim is good enough to kill the enemy when you're given an advantageous duel, you have reached the most important threshold needed to have good aim. Unfortunately for some of you, this may not be the case. So let's go over 7 reasons why your aim sucks. Before we get into it though, here's a real video of a SkillCapped.com subscriber covering for all of his no-com teammates in Valorant. Remember, if you're really looking to climb this act, be sure to check out SkillCapped.com, link in the description below. Let's begin with where aim stems from, and that is your sensitivity. I would like to preface this section by saying that at the end of the day, your sensitivity should be your sensitivity. It should be something that is personalized to your body by experimenting and finding what works best for you. But I would like to bring up a couple of tips that will help speed up the process of finding a sensitivity that fits you best. First, I suggest that you specifically use the sensitivity 0.35 800 DPI or 0.7 400 DPI. Both of these sends should equate to 280 effective DPI. If these are sounding a bit confusing, let me explain what these numbers mean. The first number is the sensitivity value that the game uses, which is set in the options menu. The second number is the value of DPI, dots per inch, which controls the sensitivity of your mouse itself. All you have to do to get the effective DPI or true sensitivity is by taking your DPI and multiplying it by the in-game sense. The reason why we're so specific with this starting point of 280 eDPI is because it's roughly the average of most Valorant pro players. We know that many of you may think this is a bit odd, since it feels like the pro player and you yourself are so different. But we believe that using this as your starting point only guarantees that you won't use an absurdly high or low sense. Once you've set your in-game sensitivity, hop into the firing range and attempt to track a single target while moving around. This is a simple yet effective exercise at getting used to a new sense. A common issue though that many people run into is that they may not have enough mousepad space to support this sensitivity. Not everyone has access to a giant desk or mousepad to fully utilize some lower sensitivities. In general, you should be able to do a 180 turn in one single motion, just in case you need to hit an inhuman flick. With this in mind though, we still would recommend that you keep your sensitivity in between the range of 200 eDPI and 400 eDPI. This sensitivity range is where most pro players fit into. As you practice tracking a single target, take notice of how comfortable you feel on the sensitivity. Pay attention to see if you are lagging behind the target consistently, or are you moving ahead of the target in a choppy fashion. Depending on how it feels, move the sensitivity up or down around 40 eDPI, and then try following the target again to see how the slight change in sensitivity feels. Just remember to keep it within the sensitivity range that we laid out earlier. This will take some time, but finding the right sensitivity for yourself will save you from unnecessary headache later on when you're focusing on other aspects of your aim. Similar to how sensitivity is where your aim starts from, how your body is physically positioned has a direct relation to how you aim. How your computer and peripherals are set up may be helping or hurting your aim. A YouTube channel we recommend that dives into the more physical side of aiming is Ron Rambo Kim. He is a legendary Counter-Strike ex-pro who has decades of experience learning the ins and outs of FPS games. Many of his videos go over different topics such as your posture or how your setup should be for the best performance. To take a lesson from him, let's discuss the concept of finding your stance. Similar to how traditional sports harp on having the proper form to execute a specific action, we should try our best to mimic the proper form for good aim. Just as a disclaimer, similar to the sensitivity topic earlier, it's not impossible to have good aim with an unorthodox stance. There are plenty of examples of insane aimers with odd-looking stances. Ideally, you would want to follow these safe rules for your stance to see which points are comfortable with your body. We advocate that you try to get a desk and chair that is at the right height for your own body. In a perfect world, the optimal neutral position would be that your shoulders are relaxed, your elbow is bent 90 degrees, and your forearm is comfortably placed onto your desk. This neutral position gives us a great starting point to having consistency in our our aim. Unfortunately, once we add the variables of our desk and chair height, this neutral position may be disrupted. If your chair is too low or if your table is too high, you may have to make readjustments to your body to compensate for this, such as shrugging your shoulders, turning your torso, or flaring your elbows out. If the chair is too high or the desk is too low, you may find yourself leaning forward or backwards to effectively lower your arm position. These struggles may affect your aim in negative ways, but more importantly, these changes in your stance may also cause pain or medical issues later on down the line. The goal with our stance is to have a reproducible position that allows us to have the most consistent performance possible. You may need to fine-tune your chair or desk height to find the perfect position for you to achieve this neutral stance. Just remember that how your feet are positioned can affect your stance as well. You may find yourself lowering your chair height to find your stance, but your legs might be cramped at an awkward angle, or maybe your chair is too high, causing your feet to hang, which does not let your feet be supported from the ground. An adjustable desk is a perfect solution to getting around this, but obviously not everyone has the money to just buy a standing desk whenever they want. The reality is you may not have the resources to achieve the textbook neutral stance, but trying your best to get as close as possible and being aware of how your body is positioned should be the main takeaway from this section. Take some time to really observe how your stance is and ask yourself these questions. Is this position reproducible? Is it healthy for the long term? And does it allow my body to have consistency with my aim? To continue with the topic of consistency, let's discuss warming up. Consistency comes from our ability to raise the floor level of our gameplay, causing us to have a decent expectation of our aim. I think we all have experienced the first game of the day phenomena. You queue up for ranked as soon as the game launches, and it feels like you're just unable to hit any shots at all. You're clearly missing shots that you know on any other day would be free. Having some form of warm-up before entering your first game drastically changes the shots you should be able to hit. If we look at traditional sports, it's almost unheard of that professional players or even amateur players start a match without warming up their body. In physical sports, this is commonly used to prevent injuries since your body moves much more fluidly when it's warmed up, which is still important even for warming up for video games. But the major reason why we warm up for Valorant is to make sure our muscle memory is ready to be placed into common aiming situations. Look at it this way. Do you want to gamble your ranked points on the very first couple of duels that you have for the day? Probably not. On top of this, much of the time spent in a ranked game is spent not even getting to shoot at enemies. Going into a lower risk environment where you have much more uptime in gunfights will help speed up the process in reaching a warmed up state. We encourage you to spend a bit of time in either the range or a deathmatch so you can remind your muscle memory how to shoot at targets in the way you want to. I know that many of you may feel like this is a bit annoying to do since sometimes you just want to hop into a ranked game as soon as possible, using excuses such as, I don't have enough time to warm up. I would reply to this sentiment by saying that focusing on the quality of your games rather than the quantity is how you will find more consistent performances. Let's frame it this way. If you spend 15 to 30 minutes warming up so that the floor level of your aim is a bit higher for the rest of your games, it's basically the same as spending roughly one game or even one half worth of time to raise the quality of the rest of the games later on. Here are some very basic but productive warm-ups that you can do in the range. First, start off by spawning all of the bots by shooting the practice box. Then, slowly flick from one target's head to another while aiming for 100% accuracy. This will focus your muscle memory on the feeling of accurate flicks. As you feel more comfortable, speed up the flicking process while still maintaining 100% accuracy. As you repeat this process over and over, you should get to the point where you seamlessly transition your slow flicks into accurate but fast ones. Once your flicks feel comfortable, spend some time just moving around while shooting the bots. Get creative and use multiple shooting styles as you warm up. Tapping headshots, small bursts, and spray transfers are a couple of examples you can use. To finish up your warm-up, queue for a couple of death matches. This will help complete the warm-up routine by putting you in scenarios where your target can shoot back at you. I believe this is a worthy trade-off if your main focus is to improve the consistency of your aim. This extra layer of pressure helps fully cement your muscle memory to getting used to hitting shots in more stressful situations. The cornerstone to great aim is having proper crosshair placement. Before we dive deeper into this topic, we would like to let you know that we do have an entire video breaking down crosshair placement in great detail. If you're looking to have a much more in-depth breakdown of crosshair placement, check this video out before finishing this one. For this section, we will be mostly focusing on defensive crosshair placement, since we'll talk about how to use crosshair placement for peeking in a later segment. The two key elements when it comes to crosshair placement is first, the height of your crosshair, and second, the width between your crosshair and the edge of a wall. As most of you have heard time and time again, keep your crosshair at head level. This gives you the best opportunity at eliminating the target as quickly as possible and with as little readjustment needed. Headshots are the universal FPS mechanic that gives you the lowest amount of time needed to get a frag. At first, this might be a bit hard to gauge if you don't have much experience with head level crosshair placement. In situations like these, I would urge you to spend some time watching recorded footage of your own gameplay where you felt like your crosshair placement was vertically off. Take notice of where the head of your opponent was relative to the objects surrounding them. Use these objects as reference points to have some kind of reminder where head level is the next time you're in that position. You can even take it a step further and hop into a custom lobby and practice keeping your crosshair at head level relative to the reference point you gave yourself. As for the width distance of your crosshair, there's a bit more subjectivity on how wide you need to place your crosshair. This is due to some players having a bit quicker click reaction time due to circumstances such as genetics, physical condition, and experience in holding that individual angle. But there are some rules to follow that can help with determining this. The depth at which an enemy may peek at will change how wide you should place your crosshair. If an enemy is peeking from very close to the corner, they will be a bigger target and move much faster from your perspective. In cases like these, place your crosshair a bit wider to compensate for their speed. The opposite of this is true as well, since they will move slower from your perspective if they peek further away from the corner, resulting in you placing your crosshair a bit tighter to the wall. These rules may not apply though if the opponent chooses to use different types of peeks, such as jiggle peeks or wide peeks, so keep these variables in mind. Many believe that aim is just how well you can control your mouse, but an underrated mechanic with aim is using your movement to move your crosshair rather than solely using your mouse hand to make adjustments. This is most apparent when using the slice the pie peeking technique that we went over in the crosshair placement video we mentioned earlier. For those of you who are unfamiliar, slicing the pie is basically clearing multiple angles by slicing them up into manageable chunks. This is mostly used when you need to check the common angles on a bomb site. Being efficient with your peeks during this technique requires you to use your strafes to move your crosshair so that as soon as you are done moving, your crosshair is placed exactly where it needs to be without having to move your mouse again. You can extrapolate this idea of using movement to aim in many other scenarios as well. A common situation that occurs is when you're in a gunfight and the enemy crouches in hopes to throw off your crosshair placement. But an easy solution to this is to mirror their crouch, which results in your crosshair moving down with you. This can give you an easy headshot since your own crouch will move your crosshair down to match their crouch. This concept of using your movement to mirror your opponent's movement to help aim can be used with strafing as well. This is also a contributing factor to why I'm not a huge fan of using third-party aim trainers. They do help with gaining a bit more control over your mouse hand, but being able to practice how your movement affects your aim is a huge part of learning how to hit your targets. This is only really replicable by practicing within the game itself. Hopefully, this is a lesson to you that you shouldn't slack on practicing your movement even if you're looking to improve your aim mostly. A bad habit that many players will face is committing to a spray way too early. This is even more clear with a game like Valorant since the spray patterns in this game past a certain point are heavily influenced by sheer luck. If we break down how the spray pattern works, it starts with having the most accuracy in the first shot. Then progressively the bullets will move up and off the crosshair until it reaches the end of the spray where it's moving left and right in a random order. The key factor we want to concentrate on is the first bullet. The first shot is the highest accuracy possible with close to no randomness associated with it. If we look at it from an objective point of view, the first shot has the highest chance of success since it has the least amount of randomness to it. Because of this, we should treat our first shot with much more care before we fire. Taking our time to line up a headshot if possible will make finding kills much easier. I know that a lot of you will feel like taking this brief moment to line up the shot might mean life or death, which is honestly true, but you have to remember that it's quite likely that the enemy may not instantly kill you if they don't land a headshot immediately. Taking a bit of damage as a trade to buy yourself some time to confirm the headshot is almost always worth it. This is especially evident with the Vandal as it's a one headshot kill at all ranges. It's hard to rely on the aim you practiced on if you're spraying all the time, which is unreliable due to the randomness. Generally, tapping and bursting allow you to rely much more on consistent factors such as your aim and movement to find kills rather than getting good luck on your spray pattern. Keep this in mind if you find yourself spraying in most of your duels. When we think of aim, an image of someone hitting the nastiest flick possible usually comes into mind. Flicks are probably the most overrated aspect of aim since they do look the flashiest to the common eye, but if a flick is needed to secure a kill, it's likely there were other elements that could have been improved on in order to make the shot not have to need one. Either way, flicking is an integral part of aim that we shouldn't disregard entirely. The slow flicking warm-up exercise from earlier is a fantastic way to practice your flicks, but I do want to show another exercise that works on more than just flicking alone. Enter the firing range. Press F3 and select the medium difficulty under the speed column. Grab yourself a Vandal, then shoot the start box. Your goal is to keep moving at all times if possible while counter-strafing and tapping for only headshots. Between every kill, keep resetting your crosshair to the center of the firing range. This practice drill will help work on your ability to acquire a target in your field of view, flicking onto their head while using movement, counter-strafing so that your shots are accurate, and your micro-adjustment flicks in case you do miss your initial shot. Similar to compound exercises for when you're working out, it trains multiple areas required for having crispy flicks. So if you ever feel like you need to work on cleaning up your point-and-click aim, try this workout. Aim is just a culmination of many different moving parts that are in and out of the game. Being able to dissect which areas need work and creating a focus method to bettering it is how you find more consistency with your mechanical improvement. Before we go, I just wanted to remind you that if you're really looking to master these agents though, I highly recommend checking out SkillCapped.com. We have so many agent-specific courses created by actual Radiant level players. Some of these courses are literally created by people who only play that specific agent and have thousands of hours on them. These are by far the best people to teach you all the nuances of each agent, and you don't even have to take my word for it. We recently added a testimonial channel to our Discord community where SkillCapped users have been posting their success stories. So if you're on the edge, I highly recommend checking that out. As always though, thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to the channel down below, and other than that, I got nothing left for you. We'll catch you in the next one.